Hi, I'm Christina, and this is going to be my March and April reading wrap up. So over the last 2 months, I have read a total of 9 books. In terms of genre, I have read 2 contemporaries, 2 science fiction, 2 thrillers, 2 mysteries, and 1 horror. And in terms of star ratings, I have 1 5-star read, 3 4-star reads, and 5 3-star reads. So it's been a good couple of months of reading for me. So I actually have reading vlogs for most of these books, so I will link all of those down below so you can go and check those out in case you'd like to see my more detailed thoughts on any of these. And I'm going to talk about the books I've read in chronological order. So the first book that I read in the month of March was The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. Now, this is a science fiction book and I really enjoyed this one. I gave this book 4 stars. And the premise is we have our main character of Harry August, and each time Harry dies, he returns to the moment of his birth. And then when he reaches his early childhood years, all the memories of his previous lives are returned to him. And then during his 11th life, whilst he's lying on his deathbed, a little girl delivers a message to him. And this message says that the world is ending and the end of the world is speeding up. And so when he dies, he takes this message with him back through history. So I thought this book was written absolutely beautifully, and there is a lot of world building here, and she really cements a lot of rules about the existence of these people who can live multiple lives. It's a book about friendship and enemies, about revenge, obsession, subterfuge, and the question of what would you do if you could alter the course of history. And I really like the way that she hooks a lot of her discussion on these kind of philosophical questions. I think it is really well done. Now, this story is definitely more of a character-driven story rather than a plot-driven story, and I do think it is a very slow-paced read, but I really enjoyed it. I think it was an excellent piece of science fiction writing. Now, I've seen that there are some other books by Claire North that I'm definitely interested in reading, so I'm hoping to get round to some more of her books sometime this year. So the next book I read in March was a thriller, and that was Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. Now, this was me giving this author one more shot. I've read 2 of his books so far, and I thought they were both either average or below average. So I read Final Girls first, and I gave that one 3 stars, and then I read Lock Every Door, and I gave that one 2 stars. Now, I will say this is my favourite out of the 3 I've read by him. I'm going to give this one 3 stars. But I still think it's a bit of a run-of-the-mill kind of thriller for me. It was good and I enjoyed it, but I don't think it's going to be particularly memorable. And I think that there are a lot better thrillers out there. So the premise of this one is we have our main character of Emma, who is a 28-year-old artist. And 15 years ago, while she was at camp, 3 of her campmates disappeared and they are presumed dead. Now, in the present, she is going back to this camp to serve as the in-house artist. And we read alternating chapters between the past of 15 years ago when her campmates disappeared and the present day while she is the artist teacher. So it was good. There were some twists and turns. There were 2 things that actually surprised me, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I was like, I did not see that coming, which is why I'm giving it 3 stars, because I enjoyed that part of it. And yeah, it was a good readable thriller, but it just wasn't anything special for me. And honestly, yeah, I think this is going to be the end of my relationship with Riley Sager, unless he comes out with something that I think sounds really good. I think 3 books by him, that's enough for me. I think there are much better thriller writers out there. So that's that one. So next up, I read a mystery, The Survivors by Jane Harper. Now, I really enjoyed this one. I gave this book 4 stars. This is Jane Harper's most recent novel, and I've now read all 4 books that she has written, and I've enjoyed every single one of them. In this story, we follow a young family of 3. We have our main character Kieran and his girlfriend Mia and their baby Audrey. They're returning to their hometown of Tasmania because Kieran's parents are moving house, and Kieran's dad has dementia, so this is going to be a big undertaking for them to move house. So now they're back in their hometown, it gives Kieran and Mia a great opportunity to reconnect with their school friends, but this is also a very difficult trip home for them, a very painful trip home for them, because years ago there was a terrible storm where multiple people died, one of which was Kieran's brother, and he's felt a huge amount of guilt over this for a very long time. So now they're back home, and then on the same stretch of beach where a girl disappeared on the day of the storm, another girl is found murdered. So it's the same stretch of beach, it's the same time of year, and we are wondering, are these 2 tragedies now linked? And I just really enjoy the way Jane Harper writes the story. Her writing is so atmospheric. She's so good at putting in red herrings and twists, and really writes excellent characters. Now, I will say this isn't my favourite by her. My favourite book by her is still The Lost Man, but I still really enjoyed this one. It's a really great mystery. If you haven't read any of her books, definitely give it a go. Give The Lost Man a go. I think all of the books she's written have been really good. So yes, I'm looking forward to whenever she writes next. And if you haven't checked this one out and you enjoy a good mystery, then absolutely do. So next up, I read a contemporary, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave this book 5 stars, and it's definitely my favourite book that I'm talking about today. I think I'll be thinking about this book for a long time in the future. So we're following 2 neighbouring families, the Gleasons and the Stanhopes, and this is a generational story. We start in the 1970s, work through to the 1990s, and then onwards. And we're following these 2 neighbours and their families as the children are growing up. And then we find this big event that has a massive life-changing effect on both of the families. And I haven't read many generational stories, and this one was done so well. I found it so easy to connect to the characters. They were so well developed, they were so nuanced, they definitely felt like real people. And it was so easy to connect to them, to sympathise with them. I thought it was written really well, and I just enjoyed it so much. I will definitely be reading more by this author. It was brilliant, and if you want to read one book out of all of the ones I'm talking about, I think it would have to be this one, because it's just so well done, and I thought it was great. So next up, I have a contemporary book. This one is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Vuong. So this one is written in a really interesting way. It is in the format of a letter from a young man to his illiterate mother. And the first half of this is very poetic, and I thought it was really beautiful. The author is a poet, and that definitely shows. And then the second half I found very emotional, very raw, a little bit too raw for me, and the writing became a lot more disjointed, and I just found it more difficult to connect with that. But it talks about a lot of really important topics. It talks about immigration, life as an immigrant. They are Vietnamese immigrants into America. And it talks about important topics such as questioning of his sexuality and his romantic relationships, his familial relationships, and also talks about drug use, and yeah, lots of interesting things in here. It's actually very unique. I haven't actually read a book like this, so if you're interested in reading it, definitely give it a go. So those were all the books I read in the month of March, and now moving on to the books I read in April. The first book I read was My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, and I enjoyed this one. I'm going to give it 3 stars. It is set in Nigeria, and we follow the 2 characters of a serial killer and her sister. And I really like the way that we follow the sister as opposed to the serial killer. I've read quite a few books written from the perspective of a serial serial killer, but never from the perspective of a family member, loved one of a serial killer. So I thought that was an interesting take, and I really enjoyed the cultural aspects of this too. There was lots of like descriptions of Nigerian food that I was Googling, which I found really interesting. Now I will say, I don't think this reads as a thriller. This reads more as a contemporary to me, like a domestic contemporary, and then there's some kind of thriller aspects in it, in the idea of it being about a serial killer. But I think where its strength lies is its discussion between the two sisters and their relationship with each other. And I'm going to give this one 3 stars because if you like a fast-paced read, I think it will be good. It was a very quick read for me, but there was just something missing for me. It just wasn't that thrilling for me. So next up is a mystery, The Aosawa Murders by Riku Onda. Now, I really enjoyed this book. I gave this one 4 stars. This is set in Japan in the 1970s when a very wealthy and prominent family is hosting a party at their home. And then 17 people die of cyanide poisoning, and the only member of the family who survives is their blind daughter. So we follow this mystery of this tragic event that occurred on this day, and we follow lots of different perspectives, and I enjoyed every single perspective we heard from. I thought it was a really well written mystery. It kept me guessing throughout, and I just really enjoyed it. It was actually on course for being a 5-star read for me. I was thinking it was absolutely wonderful, and then I knocked it down to a 4-star after I'd read the ending because I just wanted a little bit more, just a little bit more. But I still think it is an excellent book, definite 4-star read for me. This was my first foray into Japanese literature, and it definitely will not be my last. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really excellent. If you're looking for a good mystery, I think you'll enjoy this one. So the final book I read in the month of April was a horror, Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. So this is set at a boarding school in the 1900s where 2 girls are killed in a horrific wasp attack, and we wonder if there's some kind of curse involved in this. And then a girl writes a book about this story, and then that book is adapted into a movie. So we're following 2 timelines, one in the 1900s after the events of the wasp attack, and one in the present day where we follow the actresses who are going to play the leading roles of those 2 girls who were killed. And I enjoyed this one. I thought it was good, but it was very long. I think it could have done with a little bit of editing. I think it could have packed a bit more of a punch had it been shorter, and it never really tied itself up together in the end. So I was hoping we were going to come full circle with these 2 stories, these 2 timelines, and it was all going to wrap itself up and weave itself into this wonderful narrative, and it didn't happen that way. But I still enjoyed it, and I don't think it read completely like a horror. It read more of a contemporary to me with some horror vibes. So I don't think it was exactly what I was expecting, and like I say, it was a little bit too long for me. But I did enjoy it, and I think 3 stars is a fair one for this one. So these are all the books I've read over the last 2 months. If there's any here that you've read, please do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if there's any here that you would like to read, please let me know that too. So thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more of me talking about books, please do subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!